Hi, welcome to Athelmark, and welcome to Penzic University Virtual Take 2. I am Gavin Kent, and I am delighted to have you join me today for the basics of self-recording in the digital age. A very appropriate topic while we are once again in a socially distanced Penzic University. I'm so delighted to have you here, and I'm hoping, as I'm sure you all are, that next year we will be back to Penzic University in person once again and getting to share our knowledge. But this is an excellent format for a presentation like this. Today I'm going to talk about the basics of recording yourself for performance in this Zoom-enabled age in 3 different ways. We're going to talk about feeling good, how you approach coming to a performance, how you get in the right head and body space, taking care of our instrument a little bit. We're going to talk about sounding good, ways of recording yourselves. What are all the different microphones and what do they do and what do they sound like? What's an interface? What's XLR and TRS and a DAW? There's lots of information out there and I'd like to share a little bit of it with you. And finally, number 3, looking good. How do we set up a decent looking video presentation? What kind of camera do we use? What do we record it on and how do we edit it? So I've got all these different pieces I'd like to talk through, and I absolutely encourage you to reach out to me with questions, comments, suggestions. Tell me what worked for you and some things that you found a little hard. My name is Gavin Kent, as I mentioned, and in the SCA at the moment I am the King's Bard for Athelmark. Mundanely, my name is Greg Tremblay. I'm a voice actor and audiobook narrator. I've been working in the industry since 2013, and I studied voice acting, stage acting, and computer science in college. I'd love to share with you my experience learning very much as I go. I am not a professional post-production or videographer or engineer. I'm an actor, and I've discovered some basic things that help me to at least get myself out there. And you can do it too. And it doesn't have to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So let's get started with part 1, feeling good, in just a second. For our first topic, let's talk about feeling good when you perform. Your whole body is the instrument that you use to perform, and when we put it in front of a camera or onto a microphone, it can be pretty daunting. A lot of times we don't like the way we sound in recording or the way we look on camera, and so getting past that in order to deliver our performance can have its own challenges. There's a couple important things that I'd like to talk about. General performance, warm-ups and health, mental preparation, and staging and environment for getting yourself put together. As pertains to general health and warm-ups, your vocal and physical apparatus need warming up before any time you're going to perform. Performing is an activity, and just like fencing or heavy fighting or dancing or anything else, we should warm up our muscles, our mind, and get everything put together. Now, warm-ups are not a workout, and they're not stretching either. Warm-ups are designed just to bring blood flow to our muscles, get them moving, get them literally warmed up, increase the flow of oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, and get them ready. Our voice is a very unique instrument, and I invite you to look at another presentation that I have, The Foundations of Performing, for a more in-depth discussion of the voice. But while we're talking about vocal performance, your voice is produced by your voice box, your vocal folds or vocal cords, which are located at the top of your larynx in the trachea. We have 2 pipes in our neck, the trachea and the esophagus. Trachea for air, esophagus for food. There's a structure in the back of our throats called the epiglottis, which is designed to close down over the trachea and cover that tube over so that when we're eating and drinking, we don't get anything down our windpipe. It's not always perfect. I'm sure you've choked on water and food just like I have in my life. But that's the idea. The vocal folds are a smooth muscle tissue, which is a little bit different than skeletal muscle in that it's not under our conscious control, but we can still warm it up just like we do with skeletal muscle. And one of the ways we do that is with simple exercises like sirens through a chunk of our vocal range. Simply, ah. Just as with skeletal muscle warm-ups, we don't want to push to the absolute extent of our range the entire way while we're warming up. We just want to get things going. Things that make our face buzz are also very good for us in a warm-up. They warm up a lot of the lip muscles and stuff, like it's kind of fun. Usually you can feel it in your ears. And restricted aspiration phonemes are also very good for our vocal folds. And that is pretending like we're breathing out through a straw, or actually breathing out through a straw, and phonating some overall vowel sounds, like ooh. These cause our vocal folds to warm up, but limit the amount of air that we're pushing through them so we don't push them too hard too fast. Screaming and shouting push our vocal folds too far, and it's not good for them. From a movement standpoint, anybody can perform. Your physical ability is not going to limit your ability to perform. You can be a performer, but you need to know what your physical form can do and work within what it wants to do. So a warm-up here is a lot about finding what's working and finding what's not working. I like to start from the top down and work my head and my face. We do things called lion face, lemon face, to warm up the cheek muscles and the facial muscles. Tongue twisters are great, not only to get our tongue moving, but also to get our brain keyed in that we're going to be doing something. Red leather, yellow leather, fluttering butterflies. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Why, he could cut a quart of conifer if you gave him a quarter for every quart of conifer he cut. I like to go from there down to neck, to chest, to arms, to body, to hips, to legs, anything that's going to be coming into play in this. In this presentation, I'm just standing here, but my legs and hips are still doing work, and so I warmed them up before I got started. I just got moving around and I got thinking about what I'm going to be doing, which leads us into our mental preparation. The mental preparation involves getting our headspace into what we're going to be doing for this presentation. Why am I here? Why am I here? Am I here to make people laugh? Well, maybe, but I'm really here to engage with a group of people who want to learn something and to help present some information. So this is part of what we're here to do. If we're going to be singing a song, what kind of song are we singing? If we're telling a story, what's the story about? Is it funny? Is it sad? Is it in persona or not? Getting into our headspace, owning the stage. While we're on camera like this, I am the only one here. This stage is my stage. The downside, there isn't an audience here, but the stage is mine and I get to do with it what I will. Now, because we don't have an audience, we're going to have to imagine the audience that is really there, because there's always an audience when we share stories. Even though the audience in this case is not in person because we're talking to a camera, the audience is still there. So reach out with your mind, with your heart, to the audience who will be seeing you. Engage with them. Imagine their reactions. Let that energy inform you and bring you forward. And finally, make sure you have space to work. Make sure that things are ready and set up for you. Anything that you're going to need while you're on stage. Do you have your props? Do you have some water? Do you have the things that you're going to want to have? Which brings us into prepping the space for your performance and recording. Staging is kind of important. What's your backdrop going to be? What kind of space do you have above and next to you? How far in and out can you work? Where are you still in camera? And where are you a little bit out of it? How far up can you go? How far down can you go? Can you move around the way that you need to? What's going to be behind you? I'm going to say it. I think that generally speaking, most Zoom auto creation backdrops look kind of lame. The problem is that in order to get them really effective, we need to create a backdrop that's a uniform color with uniform lighting that Zoom can correctly interpret. And that's why the green screen doesn't work very well in most of our apartments and houses. Now you can do that. You can get a nice, light blue or light green or mid-tone piece of fabric. You can hang it really cleanly behind you. You can get it so that it's free of wrinkles, and you can get it so that it's lit so there aren't weird shadows, because the shadows change the color gradient and Zoom gets confused. Or maybe you can go out and find some kind of a tapestry or a hanging of some kind to go behind you instead. Or you can move your camera so that it's positioned in a good way. Maybe you're going to film outside or record outside, in which case, what do you want behind you? Do you want the swing set and the high tension lines, or do you want that pretty lilac bush? Think about all of the things that are going to be in your environment. If there's a mirror behind you, think about what it will be reflecting to the camera, like the camera itself. Things can really pull us out of our suspension of disbelief if we don't do some small prep work to think about how we're setting everything up. And another important consideration is turning off your distractions. Now, our world is full of noises and distractions and movements and lights, the cat, the dog, the telephone, the television, our cell phones, the heating and air conditioning. Anything that you can eliminate from the environment in which you're performing will make your performance that much more comfortable, that much more organic, and that much cleaner to work with later. If we don't put things we don't want in our performance, we don't have to fight to take them out later. And final question on the setting up and staging is, are you going to do it all yourself? Are you going to get some help? There's ups and downs both ways. If you need help, you need to find somebody who's both willing and capable of helping you. And not everyone is a good camera person. There are a psychomotor set of skills involved in holding a camera steady, in moving properly, in making decisions about the camera. But if you're going to be working alone, like I am today, you have to have a setup like this, which is a lot of pieces and things to get set up and arranged and put together, and all the things so you know that they're ready for you to do your performance. And there's nobody standing on the backside of the camera, so if I'm not in focus or I'm not in frame, I won't find out till later. All of these questions and concerns are things to look at, to take in, to ponder, to write down. And it's an excellent idea to look at some of your favorite YouTubers, independent videographers, other performers. See what they do. See some of the ways that they set up their shots. How do they put things together? How do they light things? What kind of stuff do they have in the background? What kind of transitions and audio gimmicks are they using? And we'll talk about putting those in later. But the more you experience the art form that you're going to create, which in this case is a multi-factor art form. Whatever your performance is going to be, plus the videography and the recording, and plus the putting together. So you are becoming a multimedia artist in doing this. But the good news is that we want you to succeed as an audience, and it can be great even if it's simple. But as I had mentioned, we don't want to put anything into our recording that we will then have to take out later. And so to talk about that, let's kick it off with section 2, sounding good. How do we get good audio? How do we get clear voices? How can we hear everything and not worry about what we're trying to say and if it's getting across? So we'll come back to section 2, sounding good, in just a second. Hang on, is that better? Video without the audio doesn't do very much, does it? Sounding good is a key component. So welcome back to section 2, sounding good. Now, it's not just about having a good voice or having a good storytelling and, getting up close to a microphone and just yelling into it. It's a lot about what we do with the microphones, what kind of microphones we use, where do we put them, how do we address them. So in this section, I'd like to start off with talking about different kinds of microphones. Now, there's a number of different kinds of microphones that you can use, and I'd like to talk about the different ones that we might get as consumers and also talk about some of the more professional ones as we work up through things. So let's start off talking about a microphone that basically everybody can have, the USB microphone, like this. Here is your average USB gaming headset. USB headphones, USB microphone. These are incredibly common and incredibly effective for certain things, but the audio quality in them is a little bit weird. There's a little bit of a sort of plasticky, tinny note. I'm a little too loud in some parts and a little too soft in other parts. And the other problem is that as soon as this gets a little too close, all of a sudden we get really weird. And then as soon as it's a little bit too far away, all of a sudden I'm harder to hear. USB microphones, although they're inexpensive, can be kind of a problem. And part of the issue is that all of the electronics that go into converting my voice into a digital signal that your computer can understand are all built into this microphone. That means that all of the electronics, all of which make a little bit of electrical noise, can all be picked up by the piece of equipment that's converting my voice. And also, this is a really tiny microphone. It's not a very big receiving portion, and so it's hard for it to be really sensitive to a lot of different things. Fine for gaming, fine for chatting on the internet, but maybe for a performance, especially if you're going to video it, it's a little hard. Also, headsets look a little weird because I'm wearing one. There are certainly also USB microphones that you can get that are standalone microphones. The Blue Corporation makes a number of them, the Snowball, the Yeti, and a number of different styles. And those are somewhat better, but they still have a similar problem. You're still asking a lot out of essentially a pretty mediocre microphone that's got some expensive electronics all tucked into it. A better choice might be something like a dynamic microphone, like this. Here's a dynamic microphone, and you'll be familiar with these for any time you've ever been to a performance or seen somebody up on stage talking or addressing a whole audience. These are the classic mic drop microphones. Please don't do that. Mics are expensive. They're heavy. They're pretty rugged. They're better in terms of being dropped than other things. But in order to get a dynamic microphone to really work for you, you have to really get in here. It's almost called eating the microphone. They have a relatively low overall signal and sometimes can have a fair amount of noise. Dynamic microphones can both get a fair amount of hiss that you can hear in the background, which when everything is quiet, there's oftentimes a little bit of a... because quiet's never really silent. And in order to get a strong enough noise signal to the noise, in order to hear my voice loud enough, we really have to get in here and work. This means that there's two problems with a dynamic microphone. One, again, it's going to be pretty insensitive. As soon as I start to move the microphone away from my mouth, all of a sudden it's extremely hard to hear me. I have to be really up close and personal in order to make that happen. And two, now this is limiting me in terms of my performance. One of my hands has to be holding this, or I have to have a mic stand that's holding it in my face. And if I'm recording, it's in my way. It's taking up a chunk of the facial expressions that I can make. So dynamic microphones, although they're really good for certain things, also may not be your best choice in terms of a performance microphone. Let's talk about some video microphones, starting with a shotgun mic, like this. This is a shotgun microphone. Shotgun microphones are a small diaphragm condenser microphone, which means that there's a little vibrating diaphragm of material which is moved by the sound of my voice, and it moves a little magnet back and forth inside a field and uses that to pick up my voice. The microphone itself is this long skinny tube covered by, in this case, a piece of foam which helps to reduce wind noise, which you'll see like this. It's quite a bit of difference. Shotgun microphones are often used in the video field because you can move them into different positions, and as long as they're still pointing at the actor's mouth, you can get a pretty good amount of signal out of them. So they often can be held out of frame and still get a relatively good signal. They're also very good at rejecting sounds from the side. So as soon as I take this microphone and turn it like this, even though I'm still quite close to the microphone, you get much less in the way of my voice than when I'm on mic. So shotgun microphones can be an excellent choice for certain video times when you want to be able to have somebody in an open space. Maybe they're not going to be in a place where you can easily mic them with something else, and you want to be able to hold this with a boom just out of shot or just in shot, and you know you're going to crop it down. and get this kind of signal. This is a little Audio-Technica microphone. It's not a super high quality shotgun microphone, and so it's a little bit noisier than some of the other ones that I have used, but it's very light and it's very responsive to voice, so it gets a good range of voices. Now, another microphone that you might often see used in video is the lavalier or lapel microphone, like this. Where is it? Well, I've been wearing it the whole time. Lavaliers or lapel microphones are small diaphragmatic microphones that are easy to tuck away into clothing. And if you're in the SCA and you happen to wear hoods, these hide a lavalier microphone really, really well. Lavalier mics or lapel mics are almost always a remote mic. So the microphone has a transmitter pack, which is hiding on my belt, and it sends back to a receiver, which looks something like this. Now, the receiver in this case is exceptionally useful because it can connect directly to my camera. And I can even put this and mount it on top of the camera if I want to carry it around with me and mic somebody that I'm going to be doing an interview for. So these are really useful as well. The lavalier has ups and downs. It's excellent for general performance, but it doesn't really allow you to do some proximity effect, which allows you to get in closer to a microphone or lean out a little further away from it to get a different aspect of your voice. That's a more popular technique if you're going to be doing voice-only recording, and I'll show you what that looks like and sounds like in just a second with our large diaphragm condenser mic, like this. This is a large diaphragm condenser microphone. This has a very large moving piece which can receive my voice, and that makes it much more sensitive to a lot of different kinds of vocal ranges. The piece of screening in front of it is called a pop filter. That prevents explosive air or plosives from my mouth, things like P and T and F and V, from coming out so hard that they hit the actual diaphragm of the microphone and create a very sharp and noticeable sound. And they're quite effective, as you can see, like this. Now, large diaphragm condensers, while they are more sensitive to my voice, also have the downside that they're very sensitive to other noises. So these can be noisier microphones if you're not in a really optimal environment to have a really good, clean, quiet room. But they do allow you to do some things like proximity effect. And that is the difference between being at a normal speaking distance to the microphone, which is about a hang 10 sign of your hand between your mouth and the pop screen. And then, if you get in kind of close, you get a different note to your voice. It becomes darker, it becomes lower, it becomes a little bit richer. So you can use this for asides and inner monologue and things, while moving a little further out gives you more of a distant sound, a little bit higher ends, a little airier, and gives you slightly of a different feel. Now, all of these microphones are XLR microphones, which means that these are microphones that need to plug into some kind of an audio interface. And let's talk about that in just a second. XLR stands for external line return. And that is a 3-wire way of plugging a microphone into something. Now, that's the standard kind of microphone cable you're going to see. It's got a little click, snaps into the bottom of your dynamic microphone or whatever. It can go back to a soundboard where a sound engineer can mix things around. And in our case, it's going to talk to our computer through an audio interface. These are the things that a USB microphone has built into it. We don't need these. That's great for simplification, can be a little bit cheaper. But again, as far as a microphone is concerned, it's recording signals. And these make sounds in their electronics that a microphone will still think is a signal. So having these too close to a microphone can cause excess noise that then we have to deal with. Having an external audio interface means that there is literally more distance between the microphone and the electronics, meaning that you get a cleaner signal. These come in all manner of different sizes, from little desktop units like this, to big rack-mounted units, and even little teeny inline units like this, which are designed just for a single microphone. This plugs directly into the back of the microphone. USB port plugs into the end, and away you go. Now, as with many things, sometimes the size and the expense that you have put into these has a little bit of a bearing on how well they perform. This little unit is okay, but it's kind of noisy. So altogether, this is really good for quick auditions or small interviews, but I don't really use it for more professional stuff. One of the more popular companies are the Focusrite company that make a line called the Scarlett. There are a number of different sizes of them. There are Presonus, there are Behringer, there's all sorts of different styles and sizes and costs of these. But you can pick these up for anywhere between $60 and $600, depending on what you want it to do. Most of us do not need the $600 mark. If you look in the $150 range, you can find a really excellent variant of this that will drive any microphone that you want. When it comes down to microphones too, we really have a diminishing return on spending a lot of money on them if we haven't done a good job at treating and improving our space. We'll talk about that in just a second. You ever notice how you sound different in a pillow fort? How about if you're in a snowstorm or maybe in the closet? Sound is not a thing that just goes anywhere that it feels like. Certain things absorb it, just like light. And cloth and foam and soft things absorb sound in a way that hard stuff doesn't. So if you're going to have a space that you want to record in, you have to consider things about sound isolation and sound treatment. Now, these are two different things. Sound isolation, which is also referred to as soundproofing, is all about keeping the sounds from out there from coming in here. And let's face it, no matter where we live, there will be sounds that we don't want to hear in our recording. I don't know if that could be the dog barking next door, or a plane flying overhead, or the jackhammers outside, or the tractors outside of my house. All of these sounds are things that we'll try to get in. Now, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that simply going into the middle of your house or somewhere that's further away from the outside will block a lot of those sounds out. The bad news is that it's basically impossible to block all outside sounds from coming through into a room. In order to do that, you have to have material that will absorb the energy of sound. And some sounds, like the really low frequency sounds like trucks rumbling and big bangs and maybe explosions if it's fireworks time, will come right through so much. In order to really cut those out, you need a lot of mass and a lot of decoupling, places where stuff isn't all tied together. But you can do a pretty good job for yourself, and if you're especially going to do just audio recording, or if you're going to create a little video cave to do video work, you can do that by coming into a middle part of your house or a basement if your house is buried. Basements can be hard because they a lot of times have the furnace and the washer or the water pump, but somewhere further away from the outside. Get yourself in and close some doors and windows. Even the doors and windows that aren't in the space that you're working with still reduce the sound that's coming to you. So even though it might be a nice day, close that sliding glass door, close the windows, get some things shut down to make things a little quieter for you. But the second piece that we have to worry about is sound treatment. Now, when we're in our sound recording booth or room or wherever we're going, we may be dealing with outside sounds, but those aren't the only sounds that we're dealing with, because we bring sounds to the room. When you produce sound, in this case, the lavalier microphone that I'm wearing is picking up my voice just a few tiny fractions of a picosecond between when it leaves my mouth and when it reaches the microphone. But behind this camera is the wall of my living room, and it is actually going to happen that my voice will leave my mouth, it will travel across the room, it will bounce off of that wall and come back, and so that sound reaches this microphone a few milliseconds later than the sound from my voice, creating the sense that we're in a slightly echoey room. You can hear that if you hear the difference between this, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, that lamb was sure to go, versus this, recorded in my sound booth with sound isolation and sound treatment. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. Now those are two different microphones, which will produce a different result, but the room is producing even a bigger result. If you have a space that you want to work in regularly, if you want particularly voice-only production or song production, where you want it to be a cleaner, purer sort of sound, try to find somewhere where you can either hang up where you already have things that will absorb some of your voice. If you have a walk-in closet that's pretty full of clothes, they actually can be an incredible recording space. If you've got just the right walk-in closet, you may even be able to trick it out for some video. See what you've got and play with what you have. Once again, I'm going to point out that a clean recording, a recording that doesn't have stuff in it that we don't want there, is so much better to work with than a recording where we're trying to take stuff back out. If we have a noisy room or a fan sound or something in the background, we can play with our software and take that sound out. But the problem is it can only be taken out so much. It's really easy to take extraneous sounds out during quiet times. Between my words, we can take the noise out. But under my words, we will still hear the noise. And so it turns it from a useful tool into a distracting gimmick. It would be easier for our listeners to sort out the noise in their own heads than to have it come and go and come and go. The joke in my house is, we'll fix it in post when we make a mistake or say something or trip over our words. Because the joke is it's really hard to do that. There are an amazing number of things that we can do in post-production editing work to cut things together, to introduce effects, to get in and fix an error in audio or in video. But we can't work miracles. So the less we give ourselves to do during that phase, the better the result will be. We're going to talk in just a second about how we make sure that we're going to look good on camera, how we're going to bring our best appearance, how we're going to set things up. We'll talk about cameras, we'll talk about lighting and angles, we'll give you some ideas of things to play with. So stick around, we'll come back for that in part 3, looking good, in just a second. Welcome back to part 3, looking good. Let's talk about how we capture video, how we get things set up. What do we do? Where do we put it all? What the heck do we even use for a camera? Cameras, angles, and framing are the first section we're going to talk about in this portion of the presentation. Now, cameras are everywhere now. Our cell phones and tablets have excellent cameras in them. In fact, if you're an iPhone owner, you have one of the best cameras that I've ever seen in a mobile device sitting in your pocket or your purse or on your desk right now. I don't use an Apple at the moment. I use a Droid. I have my Apple laptop, but the Apple iPhones are really wild in terms of what they can do, and they're an excellent camera. There are various things that you can use your cell phone or your tablet as your camera by holding it into tripods. Certainly we have selfie sticks. There are tripod adapters that have a spring to hold things in place. So there's lots of options for you to bring your personal video equipment to bear without spending a single additional dime. But if you do want to, there's a lot of other options. There's things like little dedicated camcorders. These things are cheap. They do a decent job. These are not usually going to record super high-def video, so these aren't usually going to be an IMAX kind of thing, but they're really lightweight. You can toss them around and take them with you, and basically everything records either onto an SD card or a micro SD card, which you can put into a regular SD port with a little adapter. So those are awfully useful. You might have one of these little babies, the GoPro. These are amazing. Their video quality is spectacular, they're incredibly rugged, and they weigh next to nothing. They're not super cheap, but boy, you can do a lot with them. One of the cool things and problematic things, though, about the GoPros is that they have an incredibly wide-angle lens. Now that's great in terms of capturing lots of action. So slap this on your helm and go on the field battle, or take it scuba diving with you. You're going to get a really amazing amount of video in here so that you know that you didn't, just have that amazing spear shot just out of frame, or that the fish was really over here and you thought you were looking in the right spot. But if I put this where that camera is right now, you'd see most of the wall of my living room. And it does make us look a little bit strange when we're in super wide angle. But these can be amazing for establishing shots, some things from the side, or doing things like running over the top of them or looking down on stuff, even looking out from the inside of your instrument or up through the soundboard. So there's lots of really clever ideas that you can do with this. And those are all ideas for what's called B-roll, right? Those are the secondary things that you can throw in when you want to get a little more creative than just talking to a camera. You can throw in some cute stuff or some interesting stuff, some wild points of view. You could even take a spear and tape this to the end of it and pretend like you were flying it through the air and then speed it up so that it looks like what it would look like to throw a ballista bolt and have that come crashing down on people. There's lots of clever ideas here. So these really are a neat little tool to get creative with different ways of doing fun video and using it to help tell your story. They can be really effective for doing interview work where you want to get two people because they are so wide angle, but they don't really have a particularly great audio system on them. So you're going to want some other way to record your audio. Well, how do we do that in the field if we're not going to bring a computer with us? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. There are some really clever ideas that you can use, and one of them are mobile digital recording systems. This is a little unit by Tascam, which is a complete standalone system that allows you to plug your XLR cables or your TRS, which is tip, ring, and shield, into these sides, record directly onto an SD card. It even has a little adapter shoe so it can screw onto the bottom of my camera if I want, and I can take the whole thing with me. So this is another system where you can run it out into the field with you to do some on-site recording, get some good audio. If you've got a lavalier, you can put the lavalier base station attached to this. You can walk around with the lavalier and you can still get your good audio. And the other really handy thing about this, and a number of them like this, they run on batteries that you can find anywhere. It's really tricky to have a particular proprietary battery and be in the field or be on a location somewhere or be on vacation and not be able to get them. So this, my lavaliers, a lot of my stuff runs on good old AA's that you can get at the grocery store. So that's another little thing to keep in mind. One of the other things that you can use is your average DSLR camera, a digital reflector camera. The Nikon D3300, which is my regular walk-around camera, is currently doing our filming. This model is an excellent little camera. It's got a really good lens, so the benefit of a DSLR camera is that you have optical lenses that you can actually zoom in, zoom out, and focus. It's got good storage. It's got the ability to plug my lavaliers directly into it and record good quality sound straight into the unit, because the native sound is kind of cruddy. You really do need another microphone. The only limitation on it, and part of the reason for the multi-section here, is it's got a 20-minute recording limit. So I have to work in shorter pieces and splice them together. But that's actually okay in a lot of cases because it gives both me and you a chance to have a quick break. Finally, another option that you can use that most of us have probably got already is one of these babies, webcams. These are high-quality cameras for the most part that are sitting right on top of our computer. You can get them set up. You can use various different software on your computer to capture video and audio. Do some tests because some of the software is set up more for streaming than recording. So sometimes you can get some audio and video sync issues which can drive you crazy trying to track them down and get them fixed. But these are a really awesome solution. You can use things like Zoom to record presentations that you're giving, or any number of pieces of software like OBS Studio and stuff to get yourself put together and have a good amount of fun. So there's lots of camera ideas out there. You just have to look around a little bit. Where we set them up and what we have them looking at is just as important, if not more important, than the quality that the camera can deliver. Because if we have a really weird angle, or if we're way too close, or not in frame, then our camera's not doing a very good job. If you have not played with selfies, take some time and play with your selfie angles. What is that angle that you find that you look best in? I guarantee you it's not from down here. Most of us look the way that we want to look from a slight down angle, usually just slightly off to one side, but play around with angles and things that make you feel like you're a little bit better. And for heaven's sake, what should be in the frame? So where you're going to put your camera will control what it's going to see, and you don't want things in your view that you don't want to have in your final piece. Is the camera zoomed in to the right degree that you don't have something sitting right in front of the camera that it can just sort of see? Do you have things that you want in frame and things that you don't want out of frame? Like this handy table that I have right here that you can't see, but has all of my stuff, including my water and my timer and all the things that I'm using today, right where I can get to them. But you don't need to see it, so it can be out of frame and just perfect. How far back can you go? How far forward can you go? Where are you still in frame? And when is something in frame that shouldn't be there? If you're trying to create a good medieval vibe, is the phone cord hanging down, or is the outlet available or visible? So try to work with your framing and decide what should be there and what shouldn't. Lighting and staging your space when you're going to be putting together a performance is also important. And when it comes to light, generally speaking, light, and more light is going to do you a favor, with some exceptions. Once we get so much light that there's a lot of reflectivity on our face, even with some powder or things to knock that down, it starts to look a little bit obnoxious. Like this. This is too much light. But that's okay, because we can fix that by bringing that light back down again. Ring lights are an incredibly useful tool. They're also really cheap these days. A ring light, if you don't know what they are, looks like this. This is my ring light that we're using right now. The ring light is a bright light source that's very uniform that can really limit and eliminate shadows if you put it in the right spot. It's important, however, that you not be looking straight at the ring light, but either through it or next to it, because it does reflect in your eyes and start to get a little bit dazzling. But reflecting in your eyes is actually partly beneficial. It does a couple things when you have a bunch of light in front of you. One of them is makes our pupils smaller. This makes our irises bigger. It makes the color of our eyes pop, and it makes us look more engaged. It also puts a sparkle in the eye. And that makes us look enthusiastic, involved, and really on point. One thing to consider, though, is that anything that you bring into your stage area that's reflective, like your glasses, oh, look, I am using a ring light, and now you can see it too. So, for certain performances, contacts are an excellent choice. We've talked about managing what's visible, but let's also talk about field and focus. Your field is how deep everything is. How close to the camera should I be? Right here, I can't get too far back, but if I only take up this much of the entire frame, then I'm really not in the right spot. I'm too far back in the field. Likewise, I don't need you to feel like you're going to be able to give me an oral exam. We need to decide how much of our frame we should be taking up for what we're doing. If we're doing a presentation like this, filling up a medium portion of the frame, most of it vertically with some space to the sides is good. We can do intentional work off to one side. Maybe we have a partner that also needs to be in frame, so we both need to know where we are. It's useful to have physical marks so that you know where you're going to go. Part of the benefit of this screen that I have behind me is that I can see where the edge of my frame area is by where I've put the ends of the screen. If we're going to be doing some form of live performance piece with other people, we want to both have space to move around. And the other thing that being off to one side can give us is the ability to put text or after images and things up like this, which can be really beneficial to add to some of our presentations if we want to be able to add some degree of additional overlay information. And that can all be done through the software. Now, software is one of the last things to be talked about today, and there's both video and audio editing software, and there are so many different programs. You probably have some of them already on the computers that you have, whether it be GarageBand and iMovie or Windows Movie Maker or any number of things. Even YouTube has got a basic editor built into it. You don't need to be able to do a mammoth number of different things. You need to be able to do some basic editing, some cutting, some splicing together, getting rid of what shouldn't be there, maybe putting some transitions in. It's certainly nice to be able to do things like hoverovers and some text, some credits, some captions at the bottom of your computer or at the bottom of your video. But you can do these things without incredibly expensive software. Now, there's amazing software out there, software like Pro Tools, Final Cut Pro. These are industry standard softwares, and they're priced accordingly. For my own audio editing, my DAW, or Digital Audio Workstation, is called Reaper by Kakos. It is a very affordable piece of software. It can be a little bit daunting when you first get it launched because there's a lot of stuff there that you will never have seen before if you don't work in audio. On the video side, there's iMovie, there's DaVinci Resolve, there are various products by Adobe. I use Shotcut for a number of my things. It's inexpensive, it's a freeware piece of software, allows you to do most of those things. But if you're a Mac user, iMovie can be an excellent choice, and it's probably built in already. When it comes down to the things that you're putting into your video, there's going to be a balance that you have to find, because we have things that we would love to see, things that are in our head and in our heart, and we may not be able to pull them off. A simple, clean choice is always going to look better than a gimmick that you didn't manage to pull off. And I would encourage you to go as simple as possible with effects, captions, credits, and etc. Because maybe you do like or even do have the right place for a flip, twirl, spin transition between one video and the next. But mostly, it looks like my Uncle Mike got a hold of PowerPoint and used it for the family gathering. Simple fade to black, simple crossfades, simple ins and outs often are the least distracting and the most professional looking when we're going to go to actually putting them together. So those are the three primary components. And I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. One of them is this: good sound and bad video is better than bad sound and good video. And here's my example.
Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more, or close the wall up with the bodies of our English dead. Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more, or close the wall up with the bodies of our English dead.
Now that's a little bit of an extreme example, but I think it still holds true. I would rather be able to hear you well than to see you really well and not hear you at all, because so much of our performance is delivered with our voice. Again, simple, solid beats failed tricks every single time. Have something that you can deliver without getting lost in the fancy gimmicks and having them not really come out very well. And finally, you can't fix it all in post. So put it down right in the first place. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am thrilled to be able to share some of these things that I have learned over years of trial and error and making things and putting them together and fighting dreams that I couldn't quite pull off with the skills that I had. I hope that you found something in it to take with you that was going to be helpful, and please do reach out and make contact with me. I'm available via email at gavinkent@gmail.com. You can get me at my blog, bardgavinkent.blogspot.com, and on Facebook, facebook.com/bardgavinkent. Thanks so much. I hope all of your performances are rewarding and amazing and are well received. And I hope that your efforts at self-taping and video recording and audio recording are fun and informative and only mildly frustrating. Have a great time. We'll see you next year at Penzic in person, we hope. And thanks for joining Penzic University Virtual Take 2. Have a great day. Bye.